She had 2 seconds to decide. Let the billionaire, Marcus Thorne, sign away his entire company, or destroy the new, fragile life she had barely managed to build. Chloe, a waitress polishing a champagne flute, saw the clause. She saw the trap that had destroyed her own life 2 years prior. Security was tight. The room was silent. The pen was in his hand, hovering over the paper. She could stay silent, collect her tip, and go home. Or she could speak up and risk everything. Her voice was shaking, but it cut through the silence. Don't sign that. The Astoria Club wasn't just a restaurant. It was a fortress of wealth, perched on the 60th floor overlooking Central Park. Its windows were polished shields against the grit of the real New York, and its clientele was a rotating cast of the Forbes list. Tonight, the private Skyline room was booked for a signing. A very big signing. Chloe Callahan navigated the thick, silent carpet with an expertise that belied her station. Her black uniform was impeccable, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun, and her expression was one of perfect, professional neutrality. Inside, however, she was counting. $3,456. That was the amount left to pay off the last of the legal debt. The debt that had accrued when her life imploded. 2 years ago, Chloe wasn't Chloe the waitress. She was Callahan, the sharpest junior analyst at Stratton Financial, a rising star in forensic accounting. She had a knack for seeing the patterns no one else did, for finding the single, toxic line of code in a mountain of data. And that's exactly what had ruined her. She had found a pattern, a series of shadow transactions run through a Cayman Islands shell corporation named Ethelred Holdings. She reported it to her superior. A week later, she was the one being escorted out by security, accused of insider trading. The evidence was fabricated, but it was perfect. She was disbarred from trading, her reputation shredded, her future vaporized. Ethelred Holdings vanished from the records, and so did her career. Now, she served $500 bottles of champagne to the very people who had once been her peers, and soon her subordinates. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth that no amount of tip money could wash away. Tonight's event was the merger between Thorne Industries and Blackwood Capital. It was, as the Wall Street Journal had breathlessly reported, a legacy deal. Marcus Thorne, the billionaire, was the man of the hour. He was a tech titan, a man who had built an AI empire from his garage. He was new money, sharp, and known for being ruthless but fair. The man he was merging with, Simon Blackwood, was the opposite. Old money. Oiled reptilian charm. Simon represented the kind of parasitic wealth Chloe had been trained to identify. His firm, Blackwood Capital, didn't build anything. It acquired. It restructured. It fed. Chloe's skin crawled every time she had to refill Simon's glass. He was flanked by his legal team, a row of identical suits from the prestigious and notoriously aggressive firm Rothwell, Stern and Associates. To the future, Marcus. Simon Blackwood raised his glass, his smile not reaching his eyes. A joining of equals. Marcus Thorne, a man with a severe face and eyes that seemed to be processing data at 1,000,000 calculations per second, merely nodded. He hadn't touched his own champagne. He was all business. His own CFO, a man Chloe recognized from Forbes covers named David Chen, looked nervous but excited. "Let's get the formalities over with," Marcus said, his voice a low baritone that commanded attention. "David, the signature packets." David Chen, sweating slightly, produced several thick, leather-bound folders. They were distributed. The room fell into a hush. This was it. The moment billions of dollars would change hands. Chloe was meant to be invisible. She moved along the wall, collecting empty glasses, her movements fluid and silent. But she was a reader. She couldn't help it. Her eyes scanned the room, the body language, the micro-expressions. Simon was too smug, David Chen was too nervous, and Marcus Thorne was too still. As she passed the main table, her eyes snagged on the open document under the bright table lamp. It was the final signature page, laid out for Marcus. It was just a glance, a millisecond. But a millisecond was all she needed. Her blood didn't just run cold, it froze, then boiled. It was a single line, buried in the final indemnity clause, a reference to a sub-entity responsible for managing ancillary digital assets. A name, Ethelred Holdings. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It was a physical blow. The room tilted. It was here, the same ghost, the same trap. Simon Blackwood was talking. Just a formality, Marcus. The standard assumption of assets. Page 54, Clause 7b. The pen, sir, David Chen said, holding out a sleek gold fountain pen. Marcus Thorne picked up the pen. He uncapped it. Chloe knew this script. She knew what was in that clause. It wasn't ancillary assets. It was a Trojan horse. It would give this ghost corporation leverage, a back door. In her case, it had siphoned off client data. In Thorne's case, what was it? His new AI project? Helios? She had 2 seconds. Stay silent. Pay off her debt. Walk away. Or speak. She saw the face of her old boss, the one who had framed her. She saw the smirk on Simon Blackwood's face. She saw the ghost. Marcus Thorne lowered the pen. The nib was a millimeter from the paper. Stop! The word was out before she could stop it. It was too loud. A strangled gasp. The entire room froze. Every head, a collection of the most powerful people in New York, swiveled to face her. The waitress. Chloe's hand was outstretched, trembling. She was holding a dirty napkin. Simon Blackwood was the first to react. He chuckled. A wet, dismissive sound. My apologies, Marcus. The staff here is clearly overwrought. Security. 2 large men in black suits who had been flanking the door immediately moved toward Chloe. Chloe's eyes were locked on Marcus Thorne. They were the only 2 people in the room. Don't, she said, her voice stronger now, more desperate. Don't sign that. The air in the skyline room became a solid block of ice. Chloe felt the proximity of the security guards before she saw them, the scent of clean wool and the subtle shift in the air. One guard, a bull of a man named Frank, put a heavy hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Now. Get your hands off her, Marcus Thorne said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a scalpel. Frank's hand recoiled as if he'd touched a hot stove. Every eye was on Marcus. He had not moved. The pen was still in his hand, poised over the document. He slowly, deliberately, capped the pen and placed it on the table. He didn't look at Chloe. He looked at Simon Blackwood. What? Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Is a waitress so concerned about in my contract, Simon? Simon Blackwood's oily charm was on full display. He spread his hands, palms up. Marcus, please, this is absurd. The woman is clearly having some sort of breakdown. We're at a critical moment. Let's have her removed and finish the signing. We have a 10 p.m. press release. I'm sure the press can wait, Marcus replied, his eyes still on Simon. Then, slowly, he turned his head and looked at Chloe. It was the first time he had truly looked at her. His eyes were the color of steel, and she felt as if she were being scanned by a high-powered MRI. He wasn't looking at her uniform, he was looking at her. He saw her intelligence, he saw her terror, and he saw her conviction. You said, "Don't sign that," Marcus said. You have 60 seconds to explain why. And if your explanation involves you being a disgruntled employee or feeling a bad vibe, these gentlemen will be throwing you out of the 60th floor window." The room held its breath. The security guards looked at Thorne, awaiting the signal. Simon looked furious. David Chen, the CFO, looked like he was about to be physically sick. Chloe's throat was dry. This was it. The 60 seconds that would either save her or see her arrested. "Page 54, she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Clause 7B, the Indemnity and Asset Transfer Clause." Marcus Thorne's lead counsel, a sharp-looking woman from his own internal team, flipped through the packet. She found the page. "It references a sub-entity," Chloe continued, her memory kicking in, the old skills flooding back. "Ethelred Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. It's listed as the recipient for ancillary digital assets and procedural source code to streamline the merger." Simon Blackwood scoffed. "It's a standard clearinghouse entity, boilerplate. Every bank uses them. This is insane." "It's not a clearinghouse," Chloe said, taking a risky step forward, away from the guards. Her eyes were burning into Marcus. "It's a corporate predator. It's a poison pill. In a normal acquisition, that clause would be written to protect Thorne Industries. The way it's written, it gives Ethelred Holdings irrevocable, privileged level access to your entire source code library before the merger is finalized. It's not a merger. It's a theft." A collective gasp went through the room. The lawyers on both sides were now reading the clause frantically. "That is an outrageous accusation," Simon roared, his face turning a blotchy red. This waitress is accusing us of what? Corporate espionage?" "Yes," Chloe said. "And how?" Simon said, turning on her, his eyes full of venom. "How would you possibly know this? Did you read it in a crystal ball while polishing silverware?" Chloe's whole body was trembling. This was the moment of no return. "I know," she said, her voice dropping, "because I'm the analyst who found Ethelred Holdings 2 years ago, right before it destroyed my life. It was used by Stratton Financial to siphon client data. I was the one who reported it, and I was the one who was framed for it, publicly discredited, and professionally destroyed." She looked from Simon, whose face had gone pale, to Marcus Thorne. "You're not signing a merger, Mr. Thorne. You're signing the warrant that hands over the keys to your kingdom. You're signing away Project Helios. And by the time your lawyers figure it out, Simon Blackwood will be the majority owner of your own tech, and Ethelred Holdings will have vanished, just like it did 2 years ago. And there won't be a paper trail left to follow." The 60 seconds were up. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier and more terrifying than the screams that had preceded it. Simon Blackwood was silent. David Chen was white as a sheet. Marcus Thorne's legal team was whispering frantically, their fingers flying across their laptops. Marcus Thorne stood up. He was a tall man, and his presence filled the room. He walked around the table, not to Simon, but to Chloe. He stopped directly in front of her. She had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The room waited for the verdict. His next move stunned the whole room. He didn't yell. He didn't call security. He didn't end the meeting. He looked at his CFO. "David." Yes, Marcus." "Get my car and find Ms. Callahan," Chloe supplied, her voice a whisper. "Chloe Callahan. Find Ms. Callahan a coat. She's coming with us." He turned to Simon Blackwood, whose jaw was hanging open. "Simon," Marcus Thorne said, his voice flat and cold as a glacier. "The signing is postponed indefinitely. My legal team will be in touch, and I would advise you not to leave the country. As of this moment, you are under investigation by Thorne Industries. And believe me, our forensics team is much better than the one that framed Ms. Callahan. He looked at Chloe. My office. Now, we have work to do. The elevator ride down from the 60th floor was a masterclass in compressed tension. Chloe stood in the corner of the polished mahogany box, acutely aware of her simple black uniform. She was flanked by Marcus Thorne, who was staring at his phone, his thumb a blur, and his CFO, David Chen, who seemed to be vibrating with anxiety. Get the Helios team online, Marcus snapped at David, not looking up. Full lockdown, no external access. I want a complete diagnostic on the firewall. Now. Marcus, the team is in Zurich. It's the middle of the night, David stammered. Marcus finally looked up, and his gaze was so lethally cold that David physically flinched. Then wake them up, David, or I'll find a CFO who can. Right away, Marcus, right away. They swept through the empty lobby of the Astoria, the click-clack of Chloe's sensible shoes echoing the sound of Marcus's expensive Italian leather. A black armored Mercedes Maybach was idling at the curb. A driver scrambled to open the door, and Chloe found herself bundled into the plush, silent interior. The car smelled of leather and power. Chloe sat as far from Marcus as she could, her hands clasped in her lap, willing the trembling to stop. She had just detonated her life, again. But this time, she had taken a billionaire with her. They drove in silence for 10 blocks, the only sound the muted thrum of the engine and the frantic tap-tap-tap of Marcus's fingers on his phone. Thorn Tower, the car's AI announced, and they slipped into a private underground garage. Marcus didn't lead her to a penthouse. He led her to what he called the War Room. It was deep in the sub-basement, a place that required 3 separate security checks, including a thumbprint scan from Marcus himself. The room was a semicircle, dominated by a wall of floor-to-ceiling screens. Most were dark, but some glowed with streams of code and market data. In the center was a massive black conference table. "Coffee," Marcus said to the empty room. An espresso machine in the corner hissed to life. "Ms. Callahan, black?" "Yes, thank you," she murmured, clutching the jacket they had given her. It was his. It was ridiculously large and smelled faintly of expensive cologne. "Sit," he commanded. He didn't sit. He paced in front of the screens, shedding his own jacket and rolling up his sleeves. "David, get our lead counsel, Jessica Marsh, on the line. I want her here in 20 minutes. Get the cyber forensics team in." He turned to Chloe. "Everything, from the beginning. What is Ethelred Holdings?" And so, Chloe told him. For the next 2 hours, under the glow of the data screens, the ex-analyst and the current billionaire in crisis held a summit. Chloe laid out everything she remembered. The transaction patterns, the legal loopholes, the way it used shell-within-a-shell structures. It wasn't just a simple fraud, she explained, the old fire returning to her voice. She stood and walked to a whiteboard, grabbing a marker. "It's an algorithm, a parasitic one. It finds a target, mimics its legal structure, and inserts itself as a necessary third party. It latches on, siphons what it needs, data, IP, capital, and then uses the host's own legal department to erase its tracks. It's brilliant, and it's pure evil." As she talked, Marcus watched her. He saw the passion, the precision. This was not a waitress. This was a warrior. Jessica Marsh, the lead counsel, arrived. She was a hurricane in a pantsuit, followed by 2 pale, caffeine-fueled data analysts. "Marcus, what the hell is going on? I'm getting frantic calls from Rothwell Stern. Simon Blackwood is threatening to sue for breach of contract and defamation." Marcus pointed a single finger at Chloe. "This is Chloe Callahan. For the next 48 hours, she has a higher security clearance than you do." She's going to tell you a story. You are going to listen. Then you are going to tear apart that merger agreement, line by line. Find me the ghost. Jessica looked at Chloe, at her waitress uniform under the billionaire's jacket, and skepticism warred with her professional respect for Marcus. Her name is Chloe Callahan, Marcus repeated. She was the lead analyst at Stratton who flagged the Ethelred anomaly 2 years ago. Jessica's eyes widened. I remember that case. She was the one who... Oh. The skepticism vanished, replaced by a dawning horror. She knew the case. Everyone on Wall Street knew the case. "All right, Miss Callahan," Jessica said. "All business? Let's go hunting." For the rest of the night, the war room was a hive of activity. Chloe, fueled by adrenaline and black coffee, was at the center of it. She directed the analysts, pointing them to specific database structures, to the kinds of legal language to search for. "Don't search for Ethelred," she told them. "It's a chameleon. Look for the structure. Look for clauses that reference external asset management in foreign jurisdictions. Look for unsigned amendments." At 3:17 a.m., one of the young analysts, a man named Ben, gasped. I found it. It's not Ethelred Holdings this time. It's different." "What is it?" Marcus demanded. "It's buried in an appendix," Ben said, his voice trembling. "Appendix 7, Section 4B, a different name. Fafnir Developments, registered in Liechtenstein." "Pull up the registration," Chloe said, moving to his shoulder. The data flashed on the main screen. The registration date, the listed partners. "It's a match," Chloe whispered. "It's the same structure, the same directors, listed as proxies. They just changed the name." The room was silent. They had found the ghost. Marcus Thorne looked at the screen, his face grim. "Jessica, get a team. I want an injunction filed against Blackwood Capital by 9 a.m. Shut down all asset transfers. Ben with me. We are going to trace the digital footprint of Fafnir. We're going to find out where the money flows." He then turned to Chloe. She was exhausted, pale, but her eyes were bright. "Miss Callahan," he said, and there was a new respect in his voice, a deep, resonant admiration. "You're not a waitress anymore. I'm hiring you, effective immediately. Your title is Senior Forensic Analyst, Thorne Industries. Your salary is triple what Stratton was paying you. You will report directly to me. We're going to take this monster down. Together." Chloe looked at her hands, still stained with a bit of marker ink. 2 years of humiliation, of fear, of scraping by. It all washed away, replaced by a single, burning purpose. "What's the first move?" she asked. The sun rose on a New York City that was about to be rocked by a financial earthquake. While the rest of the world was just waking up, the war room at Thorne Industries was already on a war footing. Chloe, having traded her uniform for a spare Thorne Industries sweatshirt and sweatpants from the company gym, was hunched over a terminal beside Ben. They weren't just colleagues, they were digital archaeologists, digging up a creature that had been buried for years. "It's not just Simon," Chloe muttered, her eyes scanning lines of code. "He's not smart enough to build this. He's a blunt instrument. He's the face of the operation, not the brain." "She's right," Marcus said from the head of the table. He was on a conference call with his board, a call that was clearly not going well. "No, I don't care if it looks bad to the market, Robert. It would look worse if Blackwood was siphoning our IP to our competitors. Yes, I am accusing him. Because I have proof." He muted the call and scrubbed his face with his hands. "They're spooked." "They should be," Jessica Marsh said, walking in with a fresh stack of documents. "The injunction is filed. The court granted a 72-hour temporary restraining order on all shared assets. Blackwood is frozen. Good, Marcus said. Now, the press. Already handled, Jessica said. We released a statement at 6 a.m. Thorn Industries has discovered significant and alarming irregularities in the proposed merger with Blackwood Capital. We are launching a full-scale internal and external investigation. All agreements are suspended. The Wall Street Journal is going to have a field day, David Chen moaned from the corner. He had been on the phone with the company's investors, trying to stop a panic. Let them, Marcus said. We control the narrative because we have the truth. Ms. Callahan, what have you got? Chloe leaned back, her eyes aching. Fafnir Developments. It's not just a shell. It's a network. It has tendrils everywhere. I'm tracking its digital footprint. It has back doors in at least 3 other tech firms. But the primary link, the server zero that seems to control the network, it's not in the Caymans. It's not in Liechtenstein. Where is it? Marcus asked. That's the strange part, Ben added. The IP address is routing through a server in upstate New York. It's heavily masked, but the signal is domestic. This was a new twist. The assumption had always been that this was a foreign entity, outside the reach of US law. And there's something else, Chloe said, her voice hesitant. This parasite, Fafnir, Ethelred, whatever it's called. It's not just stealing, it's feeding data to someone. Every time it siphons code from a target, it sends a compressed, encrypted summary packet to a second, hidden address. A handler, Marcus breathed. Simon Blackwood isn't the mastermind. He's a pawn. He gets the money and the assets, but someone else gets the real prize. The data. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just corporate fraud. This was espionage on a massive global scale. Can you trace the handler's address? Marcus asked. It's inside our own house, Ben whispered, his face going pale. The packet from the Helios project. It was encrypted, but it was flagged for transfer. The recipient address is a high-level executive server. Right here. A new, colder silence filled the room. This wasn't an external attack. This was a betrayal. Who? Marcus's voice was a low growl. Who inside my company? We can't tell, Chloe said. It's a dead drop server. Anyone with Tier 1 clearance could access it. That's you, the board and senior VPs. About 20 people. David, Marcus said, turning to his CFO. Marcus? David Chen looked terrified. Give Ms. Callahan your C-level clearance codes, all of them. I want a full audit of every senior executive's communication, every email, every text, every server access log for the past 6 months. Marcus, that's a legal minefield. Privacy laws. They are stealing my company, David, Marcus roared, and this time the entire room flinched. They have already breached the fortress. The time for privacy is over. This is about survival. Do it, or join the unemployment line. David, trembling, nodded. He walked over to Chloe and began typing his credentials into her terminal. I hope you find him, Marcus. Oh, we'll find him, Marcus said, his eyes on the screen. And when we do, they'll wish they had just asked for money. As Chloe's fingers flew across the keyboard, armed with the highest level access, she felt a grim satisfaction. She was no longer the victim. She was the hunter. The ghost that had haunted her for 2 years was finally in her sights, and the traitor who had helped it was about to be exposed. The next 36 hours were a blur of data, coffee, and rising panic. The Thorn Tower war room was sealed. No one left. Meals were wheeled in on carts. Chloe, Marcus, Jessica, and the 2 analysts, Ben and another named Sarah, formed an exhausted, high-stakes family. The Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg had exploded. Thorn Blackwood merger collapses amid fraud allegations, screamed one headline. Who is Chloe Callahan? Screamed another, as Simon Blackwood's team began a desperate smear campaign, painting her as an unstable, disgraced ex-employee. They're calling her the vengeful waitress, Jessica said, reading from a tablet with disgust. They're leaking her old falsified employment records. They're trying to discredit her before the SEC filing. It doesn't matter, Marcus said, not looking up from a whiteboard where he and Chloe were mapping the Fafnir network. The truth is in the data. What's the data telling us, Chloe? Chloe rubbed her eyes, which felt like they were full of sand. It's telling me the traitor is smart. Very smart. They didn't use their own terminal to access the dead drop. They spoofed an IP, Ben asked. Worse, Chloe said. They used a physical ghost terminal, an old server in the maintenance level, decommissioned, but never removed from the network. It's been physically patched into the mainframe. No remote access. Someone had to physically go down there, plug in a hard drive, and upload the data. It's old school. It's also untraceable from a digital standpoint. So we're blind, Marcus said, his frustration palpable. Not entirely, Chloe said, a slow, tired smile spreading. They're smart, but so are we. They had to get to the maintenance level. They had to bypass security, and to do that, they'd need a keycard. There's no record of a Tier 1 keycard accessing that level, Sarah, the other analyst, said, shaking her head. Exactly, Chloe replied. So they didn't use their card, or they used a cloned card, or... She paused. Or they're the one person who can override the security log. Jessica Marsh, the lawyer, suddenly looked up. The chief financial officer. The CFO has universal override capabilities for emergency financial server maintenance. It's in the corporate bylaws. Every head in the room slowly turned to the one man who wasn't an analyst, a lawyer, or the CEO. David Chen, who had been quietly managing investor calls in the corner, looked up. The color drained from his face. What? What are you looking at? Me? You think I... Marcus, that is... That's insane. Is it, David? Marcus said, his voice soft, full of a cold, terrible disappointment. You were the one pushing this deal. You were the one who told me Simon Blackwood's numbers were solid. You were the one sweating bullets in the Skyline room. I was nervous. It's a $1 billion deal, David protested, rising to his feet. Marcus, I have been with you for 15 years, since the garage. How can you accuse me? Prove me wrong, Chloe said, her voice cutting through his defense. Give me your physical keycard. Let's check the proximity log. The server room is shielded. It wouldn't show an access, but the hallway outside it? That's just a standard motion-activated log. If you were there, your card's RFID would have pinged the reader. David's eyes darted to the door. He was trapped. David, Marcus said, his voice breaking with a quiet rage. Show her your card. David's composure crumpled. His hands began to shake. He didn't reach for his wallet. They had my son, David whispered, his voice cracking. They had his gambling debts, $250,000, to the wrong people. People connected to Blackwood. The confession hung in the air, thick and toxic. Simon didn't approach me, David continued, tears streaming down his face. He just let me know that my son's debt could be forgiven. All I had to do was make sure the right clauses got into the merger. That I smoothed over any irregularities with Marcus. He said it was just standard corporate hardball. And the server room? Chloe asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. That was yesterday, David sobbed. After the room. Blackwood called. He was panicking. He said the partners were furious. He said my son's life was on the line unless I erased the data. I had to go down. I had to wipe the server. I didn't know what else to do. I was trying to save my son." Marcus Thorne sank into his chair. He looked old. The betrayal of a rival like Blackwood was business. The betrayal of a friend, his first employee, his CFO, that was a mortal wound. "You didn't just wipe the server, David," Chloe said, her eyes on her screen. "You tried, but I was already in the system. I firewalled it. You just left your fingerprints all over the lock." She typed one final command. A new window opened on the main screen. It was a file directory. "Project Helios," Chloe said. "The core AI code. You didn't just try to wipe the server, David. You were actively trying to download the last packet." David Chen collapsed into his chair, a broken man. "Jessica," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Call security, and call a good defense attorney. Tell him it's for David." "Marcus, I'm sorry," David wept. "So am I, David," Marcus replied, turning his back. "So am I." The snake was out of the garden, but the head of the snake was still out there. "Blackwood," Marcus said, his voice now pure ice. "He's running. Where is he?" Ben's fingers flew. He's not at his office, not at his home. But his private jet filed a flight plan 30 minutes ago. Teterboro Airport. Destination, Zurich. "He's running to his masters," Chloe said. "He's not going to make it," Marcus said. He hit an intercom on the table. "Get my pilot. Get the jet. We're going to Teterboro. And call the Port Authority. Tell them a fugitive is trying to flee the country." The Teterboro Airport private tarmac was a chaotic scene, lit by the flashing blue and red lights of Port Authority police cars. Marcus Thorne's helicopter, a sleek black Augusta Westland, had beaten Simon Blackwood's Gulfstream G650 to the airport by less than 5 minutes. Marcus, flanked by Chloe and 2 of his personal security, had used his considerable influence to have the FAA ground Blackwood's jet for a mechanical inspection, just as it was taxiing for takeoff. Now Simon Blackwood stood on the rain-slicked tarmac, his $5,000 suit plastered to his frame, his face a mask of disbelief and incandescent rage. "You can't do this, Thorne!" he screamed over the whine of the engines. "This is harassment. This is illegal. I have a flight to catch." "It's over, Simon," Marcus shouted back, his voice booming. "We have David Chen. We have his confession. We have the server logs. We have you." Chloe stood just behind Marcus, her arms crossed. The wind whipped her hair, which she hadn't had time to tie back. She was no longer a waitress. She was the architect of this man's downfall, and she felt nothing but a cold, clean sense of justice. "David Chen is a sniveling coward," Blackwood spat. "His word against mine. You have nothing." "We have Ethelred Holdings," Chloe called out, her voice sharp and clear. "And we have Fafnir Developments, and we have the wire transfers from your offshore accounts to the bookies holding David Chen's son's debt. We have everything." The mention of the wire transfers made Blackwood freeze. That was the one piece he thought was buried. He stared at Chloe, his eyes narrowing, as if seeing her for the first time. "You," he hissed. "This is all because of you. The waitress. You should have just polished your glasses and kept your mouth shut." "You should have picked a different shell corporation," Chloe retorted, stepping forward so she was shoulder to shoulder with Marcus. "You think you've won?" Blackwood laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You two? You think you've stopped anything? I'm not the mastermind. I'm just a broker. You've cut off one tentacle, but the beast is still out there. My partners in Zurich. They don't like to be kept waiting. They're not as civil as I am." "We'll take our chances with them," Marcus said. "But you're not going to Zurich. You're going to a federal holding cell." As if on cue, 2 uniformed officers stepped forward, handcuffs at the ready. Blackwood's composure finally shattered. The mask of old money charm evaporated, revealing the desperate, cornered rat beneath. "You don't know what you've done!" he shrieked as they cuffed him. "You'll be ruined, both of you. They'll tear Thorn Industries apart from the inside out. You can't stop them." "Watch us," Marcus said quietly. They watched as Simon Blackwood was read his rights and placed in the back of a police car. The red and blue lights painted a stark, repeating pattern on the wet ground. The drama was over. The work was just beginning. As the car pulled away, Marcus turned to Chloe. The rain and wind were relentless, but in the chaos there was a strange, quiet center. "He's right, you know," Marcus said, his voice low. "About what?" Chloe asked. "This isn't over. He's a pawn. The people he works for, Fafnir, they're still out there. And now we've just declared war on them." "I know," Chloe said, not flinching. "They're a network. They're in dozens of companies, stealing, corrupting." "They're a parasite," Marcus said, "and they're killing the forest." He looked at her, and for the first time, his steely eyes held something other than calculation or anger. It was respect, deep, profound respect. "What you did, Chloe, back in that room, it was the single bravest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't let him win." "Not again," she said, the adrenaline finally starting to fade, leaving a deep-seated exhaustion in its place. "Well," Marcus said, motioning her back toward his helicopter, "your salary just doubled. Again." "What?" Chloe stopped. "That's... Marcus, you can't." "I can," he said. "And I am. You're not just a senior analyst, Miss Callahan. You're the new head of corporate security and forensic risk. You're building a new department. Your only job is to hunt these people, to find Fafnir and every other parasite in my company, and in any other company that wants our help. You're going to build an antivirus for the real world." Chloe stared at him, stunned. Head of a department. 2 days ago, her biggest worry was making rent. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it," Marcus said. "I need you, Chloe. The company needs you." Chloe looked at the receding tail lights of the police car, then at the glittering, vulnerable skyline of New York City. She thought of the ghost, Ethelred, and the years it had stolen from her. It was her turn to be the hunter. She pulled her hair back, her hands now steady, and met his gaze. "All right, Mr. Thorne, let's go to war." A week. 168 hours was all that separated Chloe Callahan, the waitress, from Chloe Callahan, the director of the newly formed Thorn Industries Risk and Integrity Division. Her new life was a whirlwind of 18-hour days, dizzying legal briefings, and the quiet, terrifying weight of responsibility. The war room in the sub-basement had become her permanent home. She, Marcus, Jessica, and the analyst team, Ben and Sarah, had been in a full-blown corporate war. They hadn't just been cleaning up the David Chen and Simon Blackwood mess. They had been pulling at the Fafnir thread, and what they found was horrifying. The parasite wasn't just in Thorn Industries, it was everywhere, a complex web of shell corporations, compromised executives, and data black holes that spanned the global financial system. And today, they were going to publicly declare war on it. The Skyline Room on the 60th floor of the Astoria Club was a deliberate choice. It was a symbolic reclamation. The very room where Chloe's life had been detonated and remade was now the stage for her and Marcus's counteroffensive. The room was packed. This wasn't a signing. It was a feeding frenzy. Reporters from every major financial journal were crammed elbow to elbow, their cameras and microphones aimed at the podium like a firing squad. Chloe stood just off stage, a world away from the waitress uniform she had worn just a week prior. She was now dressed in a sharply tailored, dark navy blue suit. Her hair was down, falling in a professional, no-nonsense wave just past her shoulders. A new, heavy ID badge on a lanyard felt strange against her chest. She was unrecognizable, and yet she had never felt more like herself. "You're ready for this?" Marcus Thorne's voice was a low rumble beside her. He wasn't the cold, calculating CEO she'd first met. The last week had forged a new, profound respect between them. He was still her boss, but he was also her partner in this. "No," Chloe answered honestly, her palms clammy. "They're not here to hear the truth, Marcus. They're here to see the vengeful waitress who brought down 2 titans. They're here for the blood." The smear campaign from Blackwood's now jailed PR team had been vicious. They'd leaked her fabricated employment records from Stratton. They'd painted her as an unstable, vindictive employee. "Let them," Marcus said, straightening his tie. He looked at the crowd, his eyes pure steel. "We're not here to give them blood. We're here to show them the shark. Let's go." The roar of camera shutters was deafening as they walked out. Marcus took the podium, a solid, unshakable mountain of a man. Chloe and Jessica Marsh sat in the 2 chairs just behind him. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice cutting through the noise, silencing the room instantly. 1 week ago, in this very room, Thorne Industries was the target of a sophisticated, malicious corporate espionage attempt. For 10 minutes he laid out the facts, coldly, procedurally. He named Simon Blackwood, now in federal custody, and denied bail. He named the prestigious law firm Rothwell, Stern and Associates, which was now facing its own investigation for willful negligence. And in a moment of visible pain, he named David Chen, his former CFO, who had confessed to his role and was cooperating with the authorities. "The mechanics of this fraud," Marcus continued, "were complex, but they were discovered. Not by our lawyers, not by our auditors, but by one person. A woman who had the courage to speak up when every incentive told her to stay silent." He paused, and the room held its breath. A woman who was, at the time, employed by this club as a waitress. A woman who had, 2 years prior, been the original analyst to discover this parasitic entity, and had her life and career destroyed for it. It is my profound honor to introduce the new head of Thorne Industries' Risk and Integrity Division, Ms. Chloe Callahan. The room exploded. The sound was a physical blow. Camera flashes strobed, turning the room into a disorienting lightning storm. Reporters were shouting her name, shouting questions. "Miss Callahan, is it true you were fired from Stratton? Are you in a relationship with Mr. Thorne? Vengeful waitress, is this just revenge?" Chloe walked to the podium. She felt the tremor in her hands and gripped the sides of the lectern to still them. She looked out at the sea of faces, the skeptical, hungry eyes. She took a deep breath. "My name is Chloe Callahan," she said, her voice, amplified by the microphone, steady and clear. 2 years ago, I was a forensic analyst. I found a ghost in the system, a shell corporation called Ethelred Holdings that was being used to steal. I reported it. I was framed, fired, and disbarred from trading. My life was systematically dismantled. She looked directly at the front row reporter who had shouted, "Vengeful waitress." For 2 years I served coffee and polished champagne flutes in this room, and I listened, I watched, and I learned. I learned that the ghost that destroyed my life had a new name, Fafnir Developments. And I saw it, right here, in this room, about to do to Mr. Thorne what it had done to me. The reporters were silent, scribbling frantically. "The entity known as Fafnir is not a company," she said, her voice gaining strength, the old fire returning. "It is a cancer. It preys on trust, it weaponizes debt, and it uses fear and humiliation to silence its victims. I was one of its victims. Today, I am one of its hunters. She clicked a remote. The large screens behind her, which had shown the Thorn Industries logo, flickered to life. They showed a complex, sprawling web, a diagram of Fafnir's network, the tendrils reaching into a dozen other Fortune 500 companies. Today, Thorn Industries is announcing the Helios Initiative. The name of Marcus's stolen project was now a weapon. It is a new, AI-driven cybersecurity platform based on the very code they tried to steal. It is an immune system, and we are inviting every company on this chart to join us. We are no longer just building walls. We are building a proactive coalition to hunt and dismantle this network, piece by piece. She had them. The room was hers. The narrative had shifted from vengeful waitress to corporate sentinel. We will be taking questions, she finished, her gaze sweeping the room. Hands shot up. The first few were softballs. What is the SEC's involvement? How many firms are compromised? Then, a hand in the back, a man who hadn't been scribbling. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored European suit, his face sharp and angular. He didn't look like a reporter. He looked like an undertaker. Mr. Jaeger, from the Zurich Financial Times, he said, his voice a smooth, cold monotone with a faint German-Swiss accent. The name of the paper sent a jolt of ice through Chloe's veins. Zurich. Miss Callahan, Mr. Jaeger said, not unkindly. A very compelling, dramatic story. One might say, a Hollywood story. But here in the real world, how can we, or any of the firms you've named, trust this Helios initiative, this immune system, when it's being run by an analyst who was publicly discredited? How do we know you're not the real parasite? The room went dead silent. This was the attack. Chloe felt her earpiece, a tiny, almost invisible bud, crackle to life. It was Ben from the war room, which had been relocated to a secure van downstairs. Chloe, that guy, Jaeger, he's not on the press list. He's not on any list. He's a ghost. Chloe kept her eyes locked on Jaeger. My discrediting was a fabrication orchestrated by the very people you're defending, Mr. Jaeger. My work, and the work of our team, speaks for itself. Does it? Jaeger replied, a small reptilian smile playing on his lips. Because I have a follow-up. Isn't it true, Miss Callahan, that your Helios initiative is, as of this very second, already compromised? A cold dread, heavier and more complete than anything she'd felt before, settled on Chloe. What did you say? I said, Jaeger continued, his voice rising, projecting to the whole room, that you've been so busy talking about hunting ghosts. You didn't notice one walk right into your house. Check your screens, Mr. Thorn. Simultaneously, all the screens in the room, including the teleprompters, flickered, and the Fafnir diagram vanished. It was replaced by rapidly scrolling lines of green-on-black code. A horrified gasp came from Sarah, the other analyst, in Chloe's earpiece. Oh my God! Chloe! That's the Helios source code. The real code. They're in! Ben yelled. They're in the network. They're broadcasting the core code. It's a full-scale breach. Chloe, they're uploading it. To the public. Right now. Panic erupted. Reporters leapt to their feet, cameras flashing, shouting. This wasn't a press conference. It was a public execution. Marcus Thorn went pale, staring in disbelief. Kill the network, Ben, he roared, forgetting the microphones. We can't! Ben's voice was frantic. It's not coming from our servers. It's a man-in-the-middle attack. They're hijacking our own broadcast signal. Chloe, it's over. They're dumping everything. Jaeger just stood there, his arms crossed, that same horrible, pitying smile on his face. "This," he announced to the chaotic room, "is what happens when you hunt things you don't understand, Mr. Thorne. This is the price for your arrogance." He turned to Chloe. "And for yours, Fräulein Callahan. Your career is over. Again. But this time, it's for good." He turned and began to walk calmly toward the exit, a king leaving a battlefield. Chloe's world was tilting. It was happening again. The humiliation, the public destruction. She was frozen. She could hear the frantic screams of her team in her ear. She could see Marcus, his face ashen, grabbing his phone. She could see the reporters filming her breakdown. No, the word was a single hot point of light in her mind. "No, I am not a victim." She shut her eyes for 1 second. She wasn't a waitress. She wasn't a victim. She was a forensic analyst. And this didn't make sense. "Wait," she whispered. "Chloe, we're trying to shut down the building's Wi-Fi, but it's too late," Ben panted. "Ben, stop," Chloe said, her voice quiet. She opened her eyes. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, analytical fury. "The code on the screen," she said, her voice low. "Is it scrolling, or is it looping?" There was a pause. "What?" "Is it looping?" she repeated, louder. Another pause, this time with frantic typing. Holy crap, it's a loop. It's the same 5,000 lines of code, over and over. It's a fake, Chloe. It's a decoy." A slow, terrifying smile spread across Chloe's face. She looked at Jaeger, who was now at the main door. "It's a feint," she said, her voice suddenly cutting through the room. The room silenced. "It's a magic trick." Marcus looked at her, confused. "He's a magician," Chloe said, pointing at Jaeger. "He's making us all look at the pretty, flashing lights, the leaked code, so we don't see what he's really doing." She turned back to the podium, her voice booming with newfound power. "Ben, Sarah, the upload is a smoke screen. It's designed to panic us, to eat up our bandwidth and attention. They're not uploading. They're downloading. Look for a secondary hidden data transfer. Look for a micro-packet. Now." In her earpiece, she heard Ben's sharp intake of breath. "Found it. Son of a... You're right, Chloe. A single, heavily encrypted packet. It's not Helios. It's the Helios Initiative partner list. All the CEOs who confidentially agreed to join us. They're trying to steal the coalition." "Did they get it?" Chloe asked, her eyes burning into Jaeger, who had frozen at the door, his hand on the handle. "Transfer is at 99%. 99%. Cut it," Chloe commanded. "Firewalled," Ben screamed, triumphant. "I cut the port. The transfer failed. We got it, Chloe. We have the half-cent packet. And we have the source. We're tracing the attack's origin. It's not Zurich. It's close. It's really close. Chloe, it's in the room." Every head turned. "The signal is coming from his laptop bag," Ben yelled. "The reporter! Jaeger! He's the man in the middle!" Chloe looked at Jaeger. His mask of calm was completely gone, replaced by a naked, animalistic panic. He yanked the door open. "Security!" Chloe roared. "Lock down this hotel! Stop that man!" Thorne's personal security team, 2 large men who had been blending in with the press, were on him in a second. They tackled him in the hallway, a laptop, a cell phone, and a small black device with a blinking red light skittered across the marble floor. The room was in absolute, stunned silence. The press, the cameras, they had just filmed the entire thing. Chloe walked calmly from the podium, through the crowd and into the hallway. She stood over the sputtering, cuffed Mr. Jaeger. She looked at the blinking black box. A rogue hotspot, she mused. Old school, but effective. You routed the entire room's press data through this, didn't you? Waited for us to go live, then used our own broadcast signal as a Trojan horse. Clever. Jaeger just glared at her, his face full of hatred. Chloe picked up the device and turned to the shell-shocked press pool who were now filming her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice shaking, but this time with adrenaline, not fear. "My apologies for the live demonstration. As you have just witnessed, the threat from Fafnir and their partners is real, it is active, and it is arrogant." She held up the device. "They believed they could walk into our house in the middle of a press conference and humiliate us. They believed they could steal from us while we were watching. They were wrong." She looked directly into the lens of the nearest camera, speaking not to the room, but to the partners she knew were watching in Zurich. "You just made your first and last mistake. You sent your agent into my house. We have your man. We have your tech. And we have your failed data packet, which is currently being decrypted by my team. We're not just hunting you anymore. We're dismantling you." "The Helios Initiative," she said, a hard, triumphant smile on her face, "is now officially open for business." Later that night, the Skyline room was empty. The chaos was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of the city. The only people left were Marcus and Chloe, standing by the same floor-to-ceiling window where she had once served him champagne. They each held a flute. This time it was the $500 bottle, and this time Marcus was drinking. "That," Marcus said, his voice hoarse, "was not on the schedule." "Neither," Chloe replied, "was a live-action hostile data extraction. I think I need a raise." Marcus let out a genuine, booming laugh. "Callahan, you could buy the company at this point. I have never, in my entire life, seen anything like that. You didn't just win. You counterattacked. You humiliated them." He raised his glass. "To the vengeful Waitress," he said, his eyes filled with a profound, unshakable respect. "I really hate that name," Chloe sighed, but she smiled and clinked her glass against his. "You shouldn't," Marcus said, turning to look out at the glittering city. "They thought you were there to serve them. They just didn't realize you were serving them justice." Chloe took a sip, the champagne tasting like victory. The war wasn't over. She knew that. The partners in Zurich were furious, and they would be back. But as she looked at the city lights, she realized she wasn't scared. She was no longer a ghost, and no longer the hunted. She was the hunter, and she was just getting started. Did Chloe's story grip you? The world is full of moments where one person's courage can change everything. That single, terrifying second in the Skyline room, where Chloe had to choose between silence and the truth, defines who she is. She didn't just save a billionaire, she saved herself, and she started a revolution. But as she and Marcus said, the fight is just beginning. What do you think will happen next? Will the Fafnir partners in Zurich retaliate? How will Chloe and Marcus fight back against a shadow enemy? If you loved this story of drama, courage, and incredible twists, then please help our channel grow. The single biggest thing you can do is hit that like button. It tells YouTube you want more stories just like this. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a new story. Finally, share this video with a friend who loves a story where the underdog doesn't just win, she changes the entire game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next story.